the Libertarian Party was like very vocal about Ross Ulbricht, like leading up to the election and everything. And myself and a lot of other people very kind of happy to see that happened first week in the administration.
The Silk Road guy, correct?
Correct. Because you have a situation with Ross Ulbricht and the people talking about the way the Bureau and everybody else maybe handled things improperly. And
this is the Silk Road guy?
Correct.
Why are you for that, right? Like he used Silk Road to facilitate murders and drug sales and more. What do I have wrong?
So for me, I'm an individual rights absolutist. I'm very much a hardcore libertarian, and that means that as long as you're not hurting somebody else, you do you. What you do in the privacy of your own home is completely up to you. The thing with the Silk Road is that, yes, they may be doing illicit things, but that communication was over a public or private protocol. And, for the government or whoever to step in, again, there's nuances around. He should probably be the one to talk about it, but there are allegations that the government really overstepped in how they were there, and other instances, maybe with agent provocateurs and and riots, to all these other different things where they use different entrapment. It's just, there was a lot of shadiness around the allegations around him. And so,
a lot of shadiness around Silk Road, right? Like that's what it was. It was for facilitating.
But here's the thing:
activity.
I'm a software developer, and like Bitcoin is a perfect example, right? Bitcoin is a public ledger, right? It doesn't mean that, like, it being decentralized, most centralized government organizations will say it's a threat to democracy because people are using it for illicit activity. They're buying drugs and they're soliciting murders and all these other different things. No, it's a decentralized cryptocurrency that a government can't stop you from transacting, but because it's a public ledger, there's transparency and what is going where, right? And so he created a website, and people wanted to hold him accountable for the things happening on the website, right? And it's like, for me, I see code as speech. If you create a website and somebody uses it for nefarious activities or whatever, you shouldn't be liable for it if it's done publicly. Now, if you were doing something to shield it or make it hidden from government authorities or whatever, if the people hold them accountable. But because you created the code, like, and that's where we're kind of at in the world of Section 230 with, YouTube and social media companies hiding behind Section 230 as a private company. Whenever it's convenient, then they can pull certain strings on algorithmic weight, or they can be a public utility when they need to have that kind of protection. And I think it sucks when somebody like the developers of Tornado Cash or any of these decentralized or any of these websites get held accountable for the people that are transacting or using their services. I think it's bullshit.
I see where you're coming from. So what was the what did they nail Ross Ulbricht on? Was it like, hey, people were buying lots of drugs on your service?
No. It was about a murder, like hiring a hitman. And again, I'm not the guy to speak to it. There's people who are way more eloquent on like what happened and how it went down, but there's allegations around the different organizations setting him up.
I'm struggling with it personally because, like, on one hand, I've never held AT&T responsible for what someone said on their phone, right?
Yeah,
you can set up a murder over cell phone, and I don't blame AT&T. But as far as I know, and I'm no expert, that's pretty much what Silk Road was for. It was for illicit activities. I don't think people were selling lawnmowers and corals and old fish tanks and whatever other, like, this was no Facebook marketplace. This was the illegal marketplace.
I agree, but you have to the problem with permissionless or open systems in a lot of ways is the people who are early adopters are the ones who are outcast of the centralized platforms or entities, right? So like, when you have DRM media that is circumventing different things like VHS or Blu-ray and all these other different things, the porn industry follows, or digital, right? Like downloads and stuff like that. You have Bitcoin. Bitcoin early days was the currency of choice for people doing nefarious things back then because it was a way to transact value without having to use a centralized banking system. Now, you still had to go to an exchange or something like that, like Mt. Gox or whatever. But the point is, early adopters, when you have a lawless or permissionless, like somebody can't control it, they can't stop it, you do have your edge cases. But the problem is, when you have the centralized banking system and all these other different systems that are heavily controlled, YouTube and everything else, you have those government organizations or private companies put their thumb on the scale in some way, shape, or form and say, if you don't comply, we won't let you use this anymore. And I think that's bullshit. That's why things like Bitcoin, I'm like, you might not like it as an investment, but to be able to transact and send $1 billion from point A to point B in the most secure form known to man today, not having to deal with SWIFT or anything else, I think it's a fantastic upgrade to our economic system to be able to exchange value that fast, that cheaply, that secure without so many middlemen. And it's the same thing with information. I think information and privacy are arguably more of a threat at this point in time with things like FISA and all of these different bills and everything that get passed that allow data brokers to create profiles around people's unique identifiers and then sell that to the government so that they can have access to all your information without needing to obtain a search warrant. I think there's a number of issues and problems. So for me, I think that it's frustrating when developers get held accountable for the things that people do on their platform. It's like if you're a solopreneur, you don't have the staff to create all the checks and balances and stuff. I don't know.
No, I see where you're coming from with it, and I like Woody's comparison with, it would. Can you imagine how much trouble Verizon would be in if they were like, all right, we're looking through all the texts in all these heavy crime areas. You're now accountable for all these plans of crime. Well, but I also don't know enough about Silk Road. It does seem like it was explicitly for like, hey, you want narcotics?
But it was the early days. It was an edge case, in my opinion. Like and they were transacting primarily in Bitcoin, and that's why Bitcoin had this kind of thing, the stigma associated with it early days. But like ultimately, the security value proposition and being able to store your own crypto keys, and if you're part of a country that's going through a revolution, you're not going to smuggle gold bars across a border as a refugee, but you could smuggle a 20-word seed phrase and carry your worth with you that way, in a way that doesn't expose
20 word. That's how long it is to get back in your Bitcoin password.
Well, I mean, it depends on. Yeah, but you can do more. But guys,
was that your problem? It was too short.
It was too short. Yeah.
Don't worry, you can do more.
I want to give a whole speech.
Well, there's a number.
And you know what? And I'm going to put racial slurs in it so that current AI can't brute force it.
Ooh.
Oh,
yeah.
There we go.
But you can do multi-sig authentication too. So like you could have a 2 of 3 multi-sig, a 4 of 5 or whatever, where it requires all those other different parties to sign a transaction to be able to initiate it. It's really it's an amazing thing. And to know that like, you don't have to ask permission. You don't have to run the risk of a corrupt government, seizing your assets. That it's an amazing value proposition, in my opinion.
Are there any restrictions on what Ross can do now? Is it like, all right, you're pardoned and out of jail, but you can't go back to making Silk Road?
I don't know. I know some of those. I know there are some things around guys and their parole, but if you're pardoned, I think that's just it's time served. Some guys who get paroled can't have access to computers and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know what the terms were around his pardon.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know much about that guy. Don't know much.
I think it was give us $183 million and we'll let you go.
Well,
he had $183 million. Oh, he had so much
they,
Bitcoin. That's why.
Okay. He had a lot more than 183 million in Bitcoin. A lot
I think
more.
He still does. Pardon. Yeah. That's what I think. I can't prove it. I made it up by myself. But you really think Trump's not selling pardons? This dude's fucking selling pardons.
But you think politicians use that shit to enrich themselves? Woody.
I mean,
well, he spoke at the Libertarian Conference, and that was one of the primary reasons why the Libertarian Party got behind endorsing him.
So
that was a key talking point. He was like, week one, he actually said day one, but week one he followed through. Yeah, that was a key talking point at the convention.
The only thing I can remember from, I've never watched any Libertarian conference or rally, but this was probably 8 years ago now, where it had all the Libertarian candidates up on stage, and it must have been like Rand Paul or something, whoever like the most mainstream of them was.
Absolutely kills it. Like
he's a comedian. I know who that is.
He is. Yeah, I wish he would fucking run for something, because he can communicate in a way that a lot of us idiots can't. Like, we stumble on coherent phrases and everything, and he's just really well spoken, conveying.
And they need to pick their battles better, from what I can tell about the libertarian like I recall so strongly and laughing at all these guys up on stage. Number one, like half of them are dressed like samurai, and like one of them's got a fucking like trench coat on, and it's like, what the fuck? Like one guy is wearing a suit who's like the front runner, like something Johnson maybe, and like someone asked him in the audience, like, so what's the deal with driver's licenses? The state has no bearing and no right to label us with this and require it to move freely about our nation. And the Mike or whatever Johnson, the main guy, I think his name was like, well, we need some way to identify that people on the road are safe drivers. Like we need that. It's a useful form of identification for if you do this and that. And what if you need to buy something that is an age requirement? And the whole audience is like hiss, just like they're furious at the idea of driver's licenses. And it's like,
I'm not driving, I'm traveling.
It's like, are you guys retarded? Like they're censoring huge swaths of speech on social media, and you're having a giant debate about driver's licenses here. Yeah, like get real.
And that's a problem. I feel like every single party suffers from the extreme 10% co-opting the narrative around it, and that comes at the cost of elections. Because I would say the bulk majority of people in the U.S., I would say 80% of the people are very similar on their views, and the polarizing 10% on each end on those very, very niche, hot button, very well sharing and engagement farming topics that actually don't move the needle from most people in society. Like they drive political donations and fear, which get people to vote a certain way.
When
that's it.
The Democrats lost this most recent election, Destiny was like to the far left, forget it, you're out. We can win without you, but we can't win with you. And somehow that phrasing resonated with me. Like, yeah. Our most extreme weirdo lefts, let's just like ostracize them or something.
It didn't end up working.
Can we silence them? Like, all right, purple hair, sit in the back.